Hello, my name's Daniel Mathers and I love sheet music. In this video I hope to explain how to read sheet music if you're just given a piece of sheet music and you have no understanding of music theory at all. Hopefully by the end of this video you should be able to just get a piece of sheet music and be able to, at the very least, understand where you should be looking on the page and how to go away and note bash your part. Next thing important to note is the clef. Now, the clef is this little weird squiggly thing at the beginning of the stave and at the beginning of the bar. It is at the beginning of every system, not every bar, unless the clef is changing. That's very important to remember. This clef here is the one that you will come across the most often, and it is called the treble clef. The treble clef looks something like that and is what most singers will grow accustomed to seeing when they sing sheet music. The other clefs that are very important to know are the bass clef, which we can see in the left hand of the piano, which looks like that. There is also one other clef that is really important to know, but we will cover that in a second. The difference between the clefs is it tells you which notes are on what lines. Because between the bass clef and the treble clef, the lines where the notes are found are not the same. In the treble clef, going from the bottom to the top, we start with our first line, and that note is E. Going up to the next line above that, we go up a third to G. Going up another line is another third to B, another third to D, and that top line up a third to F. In the spaces of those lines, so not on the line itself, but in between the lines, we have the notes F going up a third, A going up a third, C going up a third, and E. A really important way to remember that is what's called the order of thirds. FACEGBD, or FACEGBD, FACEGBD, is the order of thirds. The order of thirds is really helpful in remembering what notes are on what lines in which staves, and is also used to help us build and stack chords. So looking at it, if we start on the treble clef, bottom line is E, going up a third, we get to G. Then going up another third, we get to B, another third, D, and then it wraps around. So after D comes F. Then if we were to go up again, we'll go to A, to C, to E, back to G. There are quite a few little sayings and things to help us remember this. The one that I use is every good boy deserves fruit. There are a lot of other ones. That's just the one that helps me. Something also helpful to remember is not actually in terms of the lines itself, but in terms of the spaces in between the lines, and that going up is face. F-A-C-E, face in the space, is how I remember the treble clef. When we're looking at the bass clef, however, it's once again different. Not in terms of how we count it up, but more in terms of where our starting point is. So, when we're counting up thirds and trying to find our notes in the bass clef, it's important to remember that the bottom line is G. It's not E, it's G. But once we know that, we can do the exact same thing and count up thirds to get up our lines. So if we start with the bottom line is G, we go then up a third to B, up to D, wrap around up to F, then the top line of the bass clef is A. I don't have a little saying to remember the lines for bass clef. I tend to remember the spaces, which is A, C, E, G. And I remember that by remembering that all cows eat grass. And these notes directly correlate to notes on the piano. So if we were to go up in thirds on the treble clef, we would start on this note here, which is an E. But it's specifically the E that you would find in the middle of the keyboard, which is also referred to as E4, because it is the fourth E that you will find on most keyboards. The top line of the bass clef is A, but specifically it's this A, which is referred to as A3. The reason it's A3 and not A4, even though it's coming sequentially going from A3, you would then go up to that E, E4, is because the numbers of notes wrap around when it comes to C. C is the middle note of the piano. It's referred to as middle C, and a lot of music theory is based around middle C. A great example here, as we just recapped, is that the top line of the bass clef is this A. The bottom line of the treble clef is this E. Directly in the middle of that, if we remember FACEGBD, A, upper third, is C. This C, this middle C, or C4, is bang in the middle between the treble and bass clef. So, in theory, you can count up in thirds all the way from the bottom line of the bass clef up to the top line of the treble clef. And that would go like this. G, B, D, F, A, that's the top of the bass clef. Then we've got middle C, then going up onto the treble clef, we've got the E, G, B, D, and finally the F at the top of the treble clef. That is the easiest way that I know to distinctively find whatever note you are trying to sing in treble or bass clef, is just by identifying what the lines are using something like Every Good Boy Deserves Fruit, or Face in the Space, or All Cows Eat Grass, using some sort of device like that to help us count up in thirds what the notes are. However, if you have a lower singing voice than, say, a soprano or an alto, you may find yourself coming across another clef. This clef here. This clef has a little 8 symbol below a standard treble clef. This is called an octave clef. And what an octave clef indicates, that little 8 underneath means that treble clef, as it's written, is actually sung or performed an octave below where it is. An octave is going from one note on the piano to the exact same one, either higher or lower. So, for example, this C, middle C, if I went an octave up to this next C, it's the same note, but one octave higher. So, there. In this clef, if, for example, you had a note written on this line here, usually that would be F, and it would be F4 after C4, because, as we remember, it goes A3, B3, C4. C on the keyboard is where the number goes up. So, usually, it will be written as an F4. However, even though a lot of lower voices might be able to sing this note here, once we get up into the higher notes of the treble clef, say, for example, the middle line, which is a B, it starts to get very high. And especially once you reach the top line of the treble clef, this F here, I can't sing it. I can't sing that note there. So instead of just writing all the notes super low, what people tend to do is they put a little 8 underneath the treble clef, and that means that the entire treble range, so would be from E4 up to F5, that actually gets shifted down an octave from this E here to this F, which is much more comfortable for a lot of tenor and baritone bass voices. So this F written here that we drew in, instead of being this F here, it's actually this F here. That is what an octave clef is. Something important to remember about the octave clef is that it will not always be written in. A lot of times it has to be inferred by the performer. I don't have a definitive answer as to why octave clefs aren't always written in. It could be for a multitude of reasons, from saving space, saving ink, to some people just forget to write it in. In this piece of sheet music, Tonight Belongs to You, the octave clef is not written in at the beginning, and it looks like it's written just in treble clef. However, the performer of Barry is quite often a tenor singer. If you listen to the cast recording of the prom, it can be quite obviously heard that the tenor voice singing it is singing this lower G, which means that instead of singing this G here, which is the starting note, it's actually an octave down here. Again. It's always helpful to have a look at the first note in relation to where it is absolutely pitched on the piano. If you have any qualms and you're not sure, it always pays to listen to a vocal recording just to check. There's no harm in checking because sometimes they don't put the octave clef in and it's meant to be written with an octave clef. Thank you for watching. My name's Daniel and I hope this has been helpful. Cheers guys!